March 21st, 1997. History of the Prophet Joseph Smith. In 5th through 8th grade class. How anxious I am for Heavenly Father's Spirit to touch your minds and hearts. For what the Prophet Joseph Smith did was right. He had the whole world to fight as far as overcoming their ways. For as people were converted and brought their traditions among the priesthood people, the prophet had a great job to teach them to overcome the world. The Lord inspired the prophet to do things at the right time, in the right way. I pointed out to you on this map of Nauvoo, right there toward the bottom of the map, the red brick store. Something very special happened in the top floor, the upstairs of that red brick store. Down below was the store, up above was his office, and he could meet with the brethren there. On May 4th of 1842, Joseph Smith recorded something very special happened. The temple wasn't complete, but he felt like he needed to teach the brethren certain things. I spent the day in the upper part of the store, that is, in my private office, so called because in that room I keep my sacred writings, translate ancient records, and receive revelations. And in my general business office or lodge room, that is where the Masonic fraternity meet occasionally for want of a better place. I met in council with, notice the men's names, General James Adams of Springfield, Patriarch Hiram Smith, Bishops Newell K. Whitney and George Miller, Presidents Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball and Willard Richards, instructing them in the principles and order of priesthood, attending to washings, anointings, endowments, and the communication of keys pertaining to the Aaronic priesthood, and so on, to the highest order of the Melchizedek priesthood, setting forth the order pertaining to the Ancient of Days, and all those plans and principles by which anyone is enabled to secure the fullness of those blessings which have been prepared for the church of the firstborn, and come up and abide in the presence of Elohim in the eternal worlds. In this council with these few men was instituted or set up the ancient order of things for the first time in these last days. Something happened for the first time. And the communications I made to this council were of things spiritual, and to be received only by the spiritual-minded. And there was nothing made known to these men, but what will be made known to all the saints of the last days, so soon as they are prepared to receive, and a proper place is prepared to communicate them, even to the weakest of the saints. Therefore, let the saints be diligent in building the temple, and all houses which they have been, or hereafter be commanded of God to build, and wait their time with patience, in all meekness, faith, perseverance unto the end, knowing assuredly that all these things referred to in this council are always governed by the principle of revelation. I've read you his exact words here. What was this special thing happening? First of all, in 1842 and 1843, the Lord commanded Joseph to teach many of the leading brethren the principle of celestial and plural marriage. This was a great test upon the priesthood, upon the men. Also a great test on the ladies who were taught it. To show you how great of a test it was, Joseph Smith hesitated. He knew if he taught the people the law of plural marriage, other people would kill him, maybe even some of his so-called friends. And he hesitated so long, he held back so long, that one day the Lord sent an angel with a flaming sword. And the angel had this sword ready to cut Joseph down and kill him. And the angel with this flaming sword said, "You will teach it, you will practice it, or you will be destroyed. And you and your people will be damned." He taught it, and just as he said, if I teach this, some of the men will kill me. And we know they eventually did. I know you young people have been born in families, most of you, where your father has more than one wife. It's just a natural thing to you. But in Joseph's day, when he taught many of the brethren, some of them just apostatized. They refused to receive it and left. And those men who used to be in the priesthood, they're the men that helped kill Joseph Smith. So what was he teaching in this upper room of his store? Yes, he taught them about plural marriage, but there's even greater things he taught them. He taught them the secrets that can only be given in a temple, a building that is dedicated to the Lord, and only the saints go in that, a place where God himself can visit his people. And he described the word endowments. Endowments are special priesthood blessings given to a person in the temple. You can only receive these special endowments if you're obedient in all things. And when a person goes to the temple to get these endowments, they're given certain secrets of priesthood that they can never tell. If they tell it, they'll lose their blessings and be destroyed. And that's how important it is that we learn to keep the good secrets. We don't keep evil secrets, but to keep the good secrets because they're sacred. But you see, Joseph was killed before the temple was finished. And the Lord at this time, in 1842, had inspired him to call just a certain few men into this special council, and he gave them their endowments. He gave them teachings that you and I don't even have today. We can only know them if we prove worthy. But he promised here, even the weakest of saints, if they'll continue faithful, they will be told these great things given in the endowments. I say again, notice who was there. The next prophet, Brigham Young, was there. Heber C. Kimball, who was so perfectly united with him. Willard Richards, who was also united with him, with Brigham Young. James Adams, he died before Joseph died, and he went to the celestial kingdom, said Joseph. Hiram Smith was faithful. Newell K. Whitney was faithful. George Miller was the only one of that little group that later apostatized. As Joseph Smith began to reveal the principle of celestial and plural marriage to certain brethren, some accepted it. They were commanded to enter into it. Men like Brigham Young, John Taylor, Heber C. Kimball. And then certain men rejected it immediately. Joseph taught this celestial law to William Law, his second counselor, and William Law rejected it. And William Law and his brother Wilson Law became the two worst enemies of Joseph Smith. Sidney Rigdon, he just withdrew and went away, lived in Philadelphia, separated himself from the saints. But Wilson and William Law, they became the open enemies of Joseph. Also, something happened there a few days later. On the 7th of May, the Nauvoo Legion was called together to go through marching and military exercises. It says they had Stephen A. Douglas there, other notable people there. It shows a picture in the book how they were to line up, and Joseph was to have his staff and his guards around him. But something strange happened. The mayor, John C. Bennet, he asked Joseph to go away from his guards and sit in a certain place, right where some guns would be fired. Here's what Joseph wrote. I was asked by General Bennet to take command of the first cohort during the sham battle, but I refused. General Bennet next requested me to take my station in the rear of the cavalry on horses, without my staff during the engagement. Porter Rockwell, the captain, commander of my lifeguards, kept close by my side, and I chose my own position. Something was happening among the Nauvoo Legion. This mayor of Nauvoo, who was general in this Nauvoo Legion, wanted Joseph to be put in a dangerous position where he could have got killed. Now Joseph wondered about this, and he wrote this down. If General Bennet's true feelings towards me are not made shown to the world in a very short time, then it may be possible that the gentle breathings of that spirit, which whispered me on parade that there was mischief concealed in that sham battle, were false. A short time will determine the point. The mayor said, come over here or there, without your guards. But the Spirit of God whispered to Joseph, don't do it. There's danger. And Heavenly Father's Spirit warned Joseph, there's something wrong with John C. Bennet. Let John C. Bennet answer at the day of judgment, why did you request me to command one of the cohorts and take my position without my staff during the sham battle on the 7th of May, 1842, where my life might have been the forfeit, and no man have known who did the deed? Do you know what happened a little while later? John C. Bennet they found out that he was guilty of adultery, and he had committed terrible sins. And he himself, John C. Bennet, would have to resign as mayor and leave. And later on, John C. Bennet would become one of the great enemies of Joseph. He would travel throughout the United States spreading lies against Joseph and the priesthood people. That's what immoral people do when they leave. So Joseph was warned by the Spirit of God, do not go in those dangerous spots. The devil wanted the prophet dead, but the prophet still had to teach the 12 apostles, teach Brigham Young, Heber C. Kimball, and others the great truths of heaven that are needed to be given to a prepared people. No one can ask for those blessings in the temple. The Lord reveals to the prophet who is worthy of them. And then you're called into the temple. And it has to be by the recommend of the priesthood over you. We don't have a dedicated temple today built for the purpose of giving priesthood blessings. There's a big temple here in Salt Lake, but it was never accepted It took 40 years to build. And even though many blessings were given that were accepted, we know that there were 3 other temples the Lord did accept. The one in St. George, the one in Manti, and the one in Logan. And many priesthood blessings were given in those temples. Temples are also for the work for the dead, where the baptismal font is down in the lower part of the temple, the basement. And we've taught you some of that. A few days later in May, John C. Bennet came before Daniel H. Wells, a man who could write down testimony and tell people he heard it. And it says that John C. Bennet confessed that Joseph Smith had never taught him he could do evil, that he could be immoral. And now it was coming to light, the evils of John C. Bennet. He went before the city council, John C. Bennet did, and confessed his sins there, and that Joseph Smith had never told him to do evil. I think I'll leave that story for tomorrow. Now you see how the prophet works, and where he goes, he listens to the Spirit of God. It warns him if he shouldn't be a certain place. So trust in the word of the prophet, the first inspirations of our prophet, when he tells you to do something.